What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh. This is Overlanding Now, and today I want to talk about why we chose the Ironman suspension lift over the other suspension lift options that we had available to us when we were deciding what to put on the Subaru Outback WIlderness. Now, with that being said, I also want to get into the discussion a little bit about a spacer lift as well as an actual suspension lift. And if you're kind of on the fence about what lift to get, don't let my video solely make your decision for you. I'm just going to give you the reasons why we chose the suspension we went with. We're going to talk about spacers, and we're going to talk about a suspension lift and what are the differences and how can you make the best decision for you. If you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed already, consider subscribing, come along for the adventures. And before we get started, I want to mention again, and I'm going to stop mentioning this soon, but the Upside app gets you free cash back on every gallon of gas that you purchase. I use it all the time. I'm not sponsored by them. I just think it's important for people to be able to get cash back on gas, especially if you live on the West Coast and you are getting ripped off every single day when you put gas in your car. I don't want to get into the conspiracies today, but on this episode, we're going to talk all about lifts. Stay tuned. Okay, so first things first, I want to mention, in case you did not see it in the thumbnail or you weren't paying that great of attention, we did put the BFG KO2s back on the Wilderness. And that is strictly because those tires are the tires that I trust the most to take me the places that I want to go. There's nothing wrong with the Nomad grapplers. They were great on the road. I never took them off-road. The tread pattern was a little less aggressive than what I'm comfortable with, considering the places that we try to get to and the type of terrain that we try to tackle. I just wanted to put these back on now that the lift is installed, because the next little adventure that I go on, I'm gonna push this thing pretty hard, and I will be upset if the tires are the reason that I can't get to where I wanna go. I'm not saying that the Nomad grapplers are not capable. A lot of people even like the Geolanders that come stock on this vehicle, but for me, the KO2s are where I'm comfortable. I put the KM3s on our Power Wagon, and I absolutely love those KM3s. And if they made a KM3 in this size, I would probably put mud terrains on this thing just because they are such a fantastic tire. But the main reason that we decided to go with the Ironman 4x4 suspension for our Outback WIlderness was really price. That was one of the biggest contributing factors to why we went with the Ironman suspension. Now, there are other options. There's flat out suspension with a lot of people are going the flat out suspension route, and I was heavily considering going that route. And there's also a company called Gorilla Off-Road, I believe is their Instagram. I reached out to them and they never got back to me, but I was curious about their suspension, and they have an extreme amount of down travel, but they are up above the $3,000 mark. So you have the Ironman suspension, which is in the $1,200 range. You have the flat out suspension, which is in that $2,800 to $3,000 range. And then you have the Gorilla Off-Road suspension, which is upwards of $3,500 to $4,000. So making the decision was a couple of things played into that. One, I didn't want to spend that kind of money on a suspension for this vehicle, strictly because this vehicle does not see the type of abuse that like a Jeep or the Power Wagon's going to see. Even though we push it pretty hard, it is still not taking that type of crazy abuse. But more importantly, I think people watching the channel will resonate with the idea that they want some type of lift, and probably preferably a suspension lift, but not everybody has that kind of money. So I want to start with the Ironman 4x4 suspension, which is the bottom of the barrel in terms of suspension upgrades for the Outback WIlderness, and I want to test that, and I want to push it, and I want to see how far this thing can actually go. Because a lot of the guys that are way heavier into the Subaru community than I am swore by this suspension. And that was also another reason why we decided that this suspension was probably the best bet. I always reach out to people when I'm about to make a decision like this, and generally I try to reach out to people that know a lot more than me. And there is a guy that I reached out to on Instagram, and he was kind of explaining that realistically for what you're getting and what you're paying, you're not getting much more by paying almost or over 2 times the price by going with Flat Out or the Gorilla Off-Road. So he said, get the Ironman suspension. You are going to be pleasantly surprised. And quite honestly, so far I am pleasantly surprised. Earlier this afternoon, I took it out to this little muddy, rocky, bumpy, hilly area by my house and kind of just rode it around for a minute just to see, like, I wanted to feel it. I wanted to feel what it felt like to have this thing on some off-road trails. It was nothing serious, but I got a better feel for it, and I'm really happy with the decision I made so far. And that is another one of the reasons why we got it, durability. Durability is absolutely incredible with this suspension upgrade. Now, I am not speaking firsthand because I haven't had it on the vehicle long enough to be able to say that confidently. But the people that I've spoken to have said this suspension will take a beating. And these are guys that, I'm going to be honest, they take their Subarus and they do more crazy stuff with their Subarus than I've ever done. So, thinking in terms of practicality, and so the people that are watching this video, you guys will be able to see what the $1,200 will get you and how far you can actually take it. Now, another big reason we chose the Ironman 4x4 suspension for the Outback Wilderness was delivery time. I know Flat Out makes theirs a little bit differently, and they're not a huge distributor or a huge company, and Gorilla is kind of the same situation. So I was able to order and get my suspension within 4 days. And, in the era of supply chain issues and all the stuff that we're dealing with due to the pandemic and all of that, it was nice to be able to get my suspension quick and be able to have it ready to install over the weekend. So just the delivery time and the availability of the components was a huge contributing factor to why we decided to go with the Ironman suspension to begin with. Now, overall impression from others. I think anybody watching this video or anybody who watches a YouTube video or goes to Instagram to get ideas is going to take other people's input and try to make a decision with it. And that's what I had to do too, because I had never gotten a suspension package for a vehicle other than a Jeep. And I'm pretty well versed in those suspension upgrades and those packages, but this was something that I had to lean on others for. And the people that I was talking to said for the money, what you're going to get, the down travel, the payload capacity, the increased payload capacity, all of those things that you're going to get with the Ironman suspension are going to be far beyond what you're probably going to need given the type of trails that you want to accomplish. And I think that's one thing for a lot of people that are watching this video is you guys are probably in the same boat. So getting a chance to test this suspension to give you a true honest review and feedback on what $1,200 will actually get you is extremely important to me and extremely important to us. Now, another reason we decided to go with the Ironman suspension is simply the ease of install. Now, if you guys have not seen our install video, I'll put that video up here for you to go watch if you're curious of what it's going to take to get this job done. I am by no means a mechanic. My buddy Matt, he is really, really good mechanically, so it was very easy for him to accomplish. It would have taken me 2 times the amount of time had I done it on my own, but a portion of that was trying to film it and trying to make sure I got all the pieces right that I was trying to get. So having him come over to install the suspension for me while I was videoing and just helping out where I could while I had the camera in my hand was extremely helpful. But coming from somebody like Matt, who has installed several suspensions across several different vehicle platforms, he was very willing to say this is probably one of the easiest installations I have ever done. He kind of segmented out his schedule to have 6.5 hours, and he was done in less than 4. So if that tells you anything about the ease of install, I hope it does, because it was a really simple process. Everything bolted right up. There were no misalignment issues. And that suspension from Ironman is technically for an Outback, like a 2020 and up Outback, but it fits just fine on the Subaru Outback Wilderness. Now, another thing that I think we're going to touch on, and I don't want to dive deep into this because we could probably argue about it forever. Luckily, you can't argue back right now. You just kind of have to listen, is the spacers versus suspension lift argument. And I don't know if it's much of an argument, but I just want to say anybody who is considering lifting their vehicles and they are going to choose a spacer lift because it's more economical. You are probably making a decision for the wrong reasons. Now, a spacer lift is doing nothing but putting space between the body of your vehicle and the top of your suspension. That's it. It's putting a 2-inch spacer in there. You're unbolting it, bolting it back together, and now you have a 2-inch spacer. That's it. You are getting increased ride height, but if you are getting increased ride height because you're attempting to take on harder trails, you're going to need a better suspension. So there's no point to spend the $400, whatever it is, dollars just to get an increased ride height, and you're not getting any additional down travel. You're not getting a better spring rate. You're not getting more payload. That's just something I would consider. I don't care if you put a spacer lift on your car. I'm just telling you, I would never put a spacer lift on any vehicle I ever had, ever, because it's kind of the cheap way to get the look of a lifted vehicle. And if you're just going for looks and you just want to drive this down the road and you want it to look cool and you're not taking it anywhere, get a spacer lift. That's what I would say, because it's going to save you a ton of money and you don't need any type of increased capability anyways. Okay, so that's it. It's lifted and she looks really good. I'm really excited to get this thing out. We are going to be taking it out here either this weekend, it's going to be really nice, or the following weekend, and kind of running it through its paces, see how everything holds up, and see what we can get into. I don't expect a ton of increased capability, but I am excited to be able to load this thing out and not be sagging driving down the road. If you guys watched any of our adventure videos from our previous trip, I'll put those up here too, or at least one of them, so you can go watch those. We were pulling that trailer through the desert and we were riding like that. The sag was bad. And that's one thing I hate. When my vehicle sags, it gives me so much anxiety. So we were able to put this suspension on. It has completely eliminated that. We got the spare tire carrier on. We got the spare tire on. Everything is looking so good on this vehicle. The only thing I hate, and I don't love even a little bit, is now I have so much space between the top of my tire and the bottom of my fender. I obviously expected that to happen, but I just don't love the look of it. I feel like the tire needs to be bigger, but there is no space for a bigger tire. So I'm just gonna have to deal with it. But I appreciate you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys for coming along for the adventures. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel so you can come with us when we go on other adventures and do some fun stuff. We appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.